Welcome back to Sparta Abridged, which is now, at least temporarily, a try not to die challenge, as we try to hold Rome against the rest of the Roman Republic. We can hold off their first army just fine. The second one, we also defeated in a couple of attempts at the same battle, but we always defeated them so poorly that their third wave would take us out, and I got extra mad after discovering that you can't stop ladders from setting up at the wall using infantry. So now I'm doing some rebalancing to try and make it possible to successfully defend the walls. What I'm doing is boosting all ranged damage by 25%. This is to counteract the fact I'm using the slow combat mod, which increases the health on everything, which disproportionately disadvantages ranged units since they can do less total casualties or inflict fewer casualties before their ammunition runs out due to their proportionately lower damage. Something. I've boosted them by an arbitrary amount. Whether that's enough to counteract the mod, I don't know. I just refuse to get rid of the slow combat mod basically. The other thing I'm going to try is doing the defense on easy difficulty. I don't actually know what that does, but it probably makes it easier, one would imagine. I've also activated Nightmare mode. I thought maybe that would help, but we'll see, it doesn't really. For starters, everything's in black and white, so it looks pretty bad. My strategy has changed also. I've lined up right up against the wall with my phalanx, and it's actually not a phalanx. I'm keeping my troops out of phalanx formation because this almost doubles their attack if you keep them in their regular formation, whereas it only has a very small effect on their defense stats. So I thought really being in phalanx doesn't help all that much, or maybe it's actually some sort of magical effect that's not indicated on the stat card that makes phalanx worthwhile. Whatever the case, we're trying it without. And the strategy of lining up against the wall does work out, because you can see while the ladders still pile drive through us, the enemy don't end up right behind us, they're just inside the formation instead. So it's a bit less deadly than it was the last time we tried this. As for this Nightmare mode, by the way, what it does is cause all of your units to be scared at all times. I thought the enemy might also be scared, but that appears not to be the case. It actually just makes it harder, so I should have not used Nightmare mode. Well, we've learned the lesson now. Anyway, this plan does go better than the previous attempts. We hold on for a while and keep our towers firing throughout the fight, taking out loads of enemies, hundreds at the very least. Plus, we were able to beat the enemy at the left end of our line, where their blob was a bit smaller. So we can start folding around, plus we have some cav that were freely marauding in the enemy's back lines. We're still losing the melee fights. You can see my hoplite units are getting severely punished. The enemy have numbers and stats on their side in these fights. But now we have them surrounded and we can try to out-morale them. Unfortunately, we did lose the towers. The game's quite harsh when it comes to capturing towers and gates. If there's one enemy near the towers, they will stop firing. So we stopped killing them with that method, but we did eventually bring this battle to something a little bit more successful than in the past by doing some surround and pounds and some cav charges. What I had hoped was that the Nightmare mode at this stage would cause the enemy to get scared and rout more easily. That does not appear to be the case, but maybe because it's on easy difficulty, that does debuff their morale. Again, I don't really know what the difficulty level does because it doesn't tell you, but here we go. We've won the battle, only a close victory again. We got an achievement, that's for using Nightmare mode for the first time. Well, that's probably going to be the last time as well. Here are the results. We still got owned when it comes to our hoplites. We're now very low on melee troops. The enemy lost more than half of their army, which is nice, but what we're really looking to do is win the battle that comes immediately after this. So we're now back to the third wave of assaults. This time it's a small army supported by a bigger army. So it's the case where it's a stronger force than last time. We have a weaker force than last time. However, the enemy's troops are coming in as reinforcements. It's going to take them a good 10 minutes to get to the walls. So we can use that to our advantage, of course. First, we're going to disable Nightmare mode. And now I'm going to go in for the maximum timer exploits and slap it on 20 minutes so that we may be able to just win by default if they can't kill us fast enough. Now, this is pretty cheeky, but you'll see in the battle, this actually proves to be to my disadvantage, funnily enough. We're finally lucky enough for it to not be raining during the battle, so I thought there could be a chance of us setting the ladders on fire The thing is, the towers can't target the ladders, only the infantry units. A classic problem in this era of Total War. Nothing can actually target siege engines in the game. Extremely inconvenient. If you have a bastion onager or something, you can do it with the first person mode actually, so there you go, you can somewhat target them. Anyway, we can't stop them reaching the walls. I was watching though to see if we were actually getting some kills with those tower bolts. And we are, now that I finally have some peace and quiet to monitor things. They actually appear to be quite powerful, and we get something a bit more like what I expected, where once the enemy are climbing the walls, they've already taken a bunch of casualties and are generally weakened by the fact of being shot by a few towers at the moment, and my slingers as well. Once they get to the top, we've got what hoplites we have ready to try and stop this first wave, which is just the initial army doing the siege. They're not all in range of our slingers, but still we're doing some good damage. This unit here, an elite unit, is half dead by the time it comes to climb the walls. Certainly more like what I was going for. Starting to wonder if I've made the towers too overpowered, because my plus 25% damage thing I did earlier is a buff on top of the buff I already applied to the towers, so now they're extra powerful. Anyway, that tower that's nearest to the fight actually gets deactivated once the enemy come up to the top. Now it's time for a battle. Again, the enemy probably have a slight stats advantage. The Principes have about the same melee stats but more armor and morale compared to our hoplites. So hopefully the damage they've already taken will allow us to come out on top there. As for their main force coming in as reinforcements, they're walking around the outside of the town, getting shot by pretty much all the towers on their way around to where the ladders have been set up. So that's absolutely ideal. We're going to pick up hundreds of free kills before they really get involved. I also had a few troops defending a gate I thought they might try and break in through, but the enemy used their slingers to kill virtually all of the ranged troops I had up on the wall. It was much more effective than I thought it was going to be. I just barely escaped with a few. I got some of the javelineers to come and throw into the melee at the top of the ladders. That's very helpful. I've got some slingers too down at the ground level shooting up onto the wall, and that helps us rout those units and kill them, and you can see we're starting to win the battle for the top of the ladders, or at least this first wave of the battle. That's all good. The enemy general actually ran out away from the battle and apparently tried to come around to a secret gate in the north and make an attack on his own. Unfortunately, you can see the towers are absolutely wrecking him. The fact that in this mod the towers shoot sort of scatter shots that can hit multiple targets at once means increasing their damage disproportionately increases their power compared to buffing a vanilla tower. I should have kept that in mind really. I'm pretty sure they're now overpowered. But as mentioned previously, that's going to be a disadvantage for me as well as we go forwards. Now we've won the battle for the ladders, and the question is, can we hold off all of the enemy stuff that's going to come up next? I thought we actually wouldn't, but we totally could because the game glitched out. We just got a glitch in our favour. All of the enemy's remaining units just ran around in circles beneath the ladders getting shot, and that's why it was to our disadvantage that I set the time limit to be so low. Because if we had another 40 minutes, I think our towers would have just killed the entire enemy army while they sat there running about. Instead, many enemies survive, but at least we have got through that extra wave of our Rome defense, and at last we get through the Rome turn in general. So we've completed the Try Not to Die challenge, we've got to the next turn. We're still not in an ideal situation, of course, with Roman territory and Roman armies in all directions, and their ability to recruit new troops will be much greater than ours, so they can sustain extreme losses much better than we can. I'm going to give my guys the Polis Defenders army tradition, after defending this polis so many times, some of them in alternate timelines, but maybe the experience seeped through all the same. We're actually in okay condition because we got a hefty turn of replenishment at the start of our turn right now. And I also noticed while looking in the recruitment menu that the local Campanian hoplites are actually better than the Perioikoi hoplites I brought from Sparta. So that's handy. They're only slightly better, but they're cheaper I think as well. So I'm going to be gradually replacing our Spartan army with a local Italian army actually. I think this mod just generally makes Italy powerful to represent the power of the Roman Republic. So all of their units, including the area of recruitment ones, are very good, so we'll grab some of those. We also need to convert the buildings in Rome over. That will give us a garrison and start converting them to be Hellenic in culture, although that's not likely to happen until we take the rest of the Italia province. The dream of replenishing and changing the buildings is of course destroyed right away because another stack appears from the fog and sets us under siege, which will cancel all of that stuff I was trying to do. Great news. A couple of turns passes without much happening. I just left the siege going, waiting for the enemy to attack. But by now I've prepared my secret second army. I mentioned in the past I wanted to try and take Taurus by sea, the thing I was originally going to do with the main army but ended up not being able to do. Now we're setting up to do it again. Unfortunately, the movement range is so low in the sea that we can't just instantly get across. I am, by the way, now on 12 turns per year, so the movement ranges are a little bit more justifiable, but still not really. I think it takes a couple of days, it says in the old books, to cross that strait in the Roman era. Anyway, the enemy besieging Rome do come and attack, and this battle is more like the sort of battle I wanted all along. For starters, while we were under siege for 2 or 3 turns, they wasted a bunch of their time building tortoises, which I think the AI just can't use, so they've been left behind. We're only attacked by a few ladders and a ram. Now I predicted that the enemy would use their ladders on the same bit of wall I saw them use it on before when they attacked this particular area of the city, and that was indeed the case, so I've deployed my hoplites in front of that bit of wall to stop them being able to use the ladders, thus preparing for a use the towers and slingers strategy. The enemy are locked in place, most of their troops can't fight with this really inefficient formation, the towers, the slingers and the javs are hammering them the whole time. This is more like it. Their general comes over and tries to open the gate by throwing torches. That's not really going to work because the gatehouse towers and some javs nearby and a few slingers will be taking him down, and he probably dies at about this point. Meanwhile, over by the ladders, I've actually used hoplite phalanx formation this time, and you can see the range effect it has. It allows your guys to push the enemy back and not get attacked so much. Maybe that's the magic factor I was alluding to earlier. Anyway, suffice to say, we stop the enemy from climbing up the ladders, and the towers are gradually killing them, plus the hoplites will be getting the odd kill here and there, and the slingers should be doing more damage than before since I've boosted them up at the start of this part. I'm also taking out the enemy's ranged units with my cav at the back, and we're just going to do a long story short on that one. We did win. We didn't really destroy their army very much. Actually, a lot of them escaped, but we've held the city once again, and we don't get set under siege again. So there is the potential there to grab some replenishment. However, it's actually not that easy because now we move into one of the many things that can prevent you from getting replenishment. I don't know what it is in this case. I remember having this problem with Divide et Impera before. There are lots of things in this mod that can cancel replenishment. In this case, it's claiming to be manpower, but we can see that it isn't. Everything, even the ones that we have the manpower to recruit, can't be replenished. Although what we can do is disband and re-recruit units to effectively replenish. This costs us some money, but allows us to actually get more troops. It's kind of annoying because the whole point of the Divide et Impera garrison system was that when your army is in the city, it causes rebellions like the one you can see outside the city by lowering public order, reversing the usual mechanic. But in exchange you're supposed to replenish really fast, which does work except when it doesn't. Just one of those annoying things about this mod. It doesn't quite fit into the game's mechanics. Kind of like the supply system, it's hard to indicate what's going on to the player. What might be happening in this case is the fact that it's winter. You get minus 10% replenishment in winter, so maybe if our replenishment isn't over 10%, that's going to reduce it to 0, something like that. And of course, because we're on 12 turns per year, we now have 4 turns of winter, so this is a bad time to be sitting around hoping to replenish. But yes, by recruiting units and disbanding and merging things instead, we can work around that as long as we have money, which won't be for long. You can see we are hemorrhaging money right now because I can't afford that second army. And you know what that means? They need to either secure us some money or die, and doing a battle is the way to achieve both. So here we go, I go and do the port assault on Taurus. They do have an overwhelming balance bar advantage, but I had foreknowledge that garrison units in Divide et Impera tend to be weighted much more heavily on the balance bar. than they need to be because their morale is very low and they're just generally not very good units. Plus, once we're in the battle, you can see the balance bar is a bit better. However, we do have several problems actually. Looks like one problem was avoided here. The enemy's Jav barrage as we come in to land in the city was blocked by an invisible wall, so our troops are doing well because of that. However, check the time limit in the bottom right. Yes, it's still on 20-minute battles, meaning that by the time we actually arrive to start the fight, there are only a couple of minutes left. Plus, the enemy had some slingers in an ideal position to attack our landing point, attacking our non-shielded flank. And on top of all that, we're fighting below some towers. Overall, this landing is extremely difficult, so even though our units are better than theirs in this case, we don't make much progress, and then the battle just ends in a decisive defeat. So, I went back to before the fight, and I've put it back to 60 minutes now, and I'll try to keep it there. Let's gradually move things back to normal settings. I'm also going to do a different strategy for this second attempt. I've got my ranged units looking out near the walls over there, and the enemy have their ranged units at the same point. So that's just a distractionary tactic. I've also brought some troops to attack a completely separate gate. Unfortunately, only one of the two units I sent was able to attack gates. It's a supply ship crew. And now we're being bitten back for having buffed the towers so much. I mentioned this before. While buffing them helped us before, it's also going to hinder us throughout the campaign, including right now, as we certainly can't open that gate and we lose our supply ship crew. Plus, there are towers overlooking the landing we need to make. So whatever we do, we're going to be taking those overpowered tower attacks. However, in this case we have to land and try to do something. So in we go. We're limited to 3 at a time, but luckily because they updated the game, it's not only 3 like it used to be in Rome 2. You could only land a few ships, and then that was that. I'm also going to bring up my tower ship, because these tower ships have an unlimited ammo attack that shoots out of the tower on the front, and we can use that to kill enemies during this fight. In particular, I was trying to go for these slingers, who are again in a pretty good position, not quite as good as last time. If we can get rid of them, we may even be able to clear a way to go and capture that tower right next to us. The tower ship on my side also absorbs a lot of the enemy's tower shots because the tower's trying to set fire to the ship, which protects our infantry. And indeed, the infantry do well. We start pushing the enemy back and just straight up melee killing all of their troops and clearing a path. However, during the fight, we actually lost our general. He was only fighting Italian citizenry, so it's unlikely to have been because of that, but we are taking sling stones from the right side of the screen constantly onto our general, so eventually the man himself goes down. But that's not quite the end of the story with our general actually. There's something suspicious going on that I noticed about now, while I was splitting my forces and having one group try to get towards the tower. I selected my general, and if you were looking very closely there, you would have seen there was only like 10 guys in the melee that are technically part of my general's unit, but I still have 150 guys in the unit, it says. So that's the first reason to suspect something's gone wrong, and I kind of knew what it was because I was pretty sure this had happened to me before in one of my ancient Rome 2 experiences. Anyway, I continued on driving towards that tower. Again, we are bitten by me buffing up the towers, because I can't do this with a single unit. They all get killed by the tower before they're finished decapping it. Plus in this mod you can't pick various formations for hoplite units, they have to have a certain thickness to them, and that means I can't form up in a single line below the wall or something out of the tower's line of sight. There's the answer to the general mystery. Their flag gets moved to where their unit really is. It's done the thing where some units have been teleported under the map. This happens occasionally, not quite sure why. It's probably, in my estimation, because we came in on a ship that was too small or something, and it caused some guys to get teleported to a random spot or the origin point of the map, something like that. So that's unfortunate, because the other half of our general unit, our best unit, now isn't present in the fight. We failed to take the tower, and because of that, we straight up lose this fight. The tower goes on to just kill all of our melee infantry no matter how well they were doing in those fights. And we lose. I ended up just quitting the battle before we lost, but we were definitely going to lose. that was the end of that. I could just take the L, but I'm too mad, and this is the exploit everything campaign, so I just save scummed right back to before the battle and started thinking of doing something else. I can still recruit ships while I'm in position to attack because we're in our own naval recruitment zone here. So I'm going to grab a couple more ships to help out and attack in the next turn. Unfortunately, the enemy also have an admiral now here, so they're strengthened a little bit too, but maybe this benefited us more than them. Not quite sure about that. The balance bar looks a bit better actually this time around. So we come in to make some more landings, but we're going to do things differently this time. We're not going to focus too much on landing in the town. What I can do is land most of my ground units, my land units, just somewhere, and go and make a concerted attack on a gate that will probably be undefended, and then once that's distracted the enemy, we can make a smaller landing at the landing point and perhaps capture some towers, something like that. Unfortunately, when I save scummed, it set the time limit back to 20 minutes, which I realized after a while, so we had to give up on that attempt, set it back to 60 minutes, and here we go with another attempt at this battle. This is what I'll talk about next time as I unveil my master plan, my several master plans actually, to defeat this battle, with various different techniques being used to varying degrees of success, a true masterclass.